Can you please elaborate a bit about Section 7 of RBI Act?
See, Section 7 of the RBI Act 1934 gives Government of India the powers to let RBI act in accordance with the directions given by the government. Now, what we need to understand here is that Reserve Bank of India Act 1934, it was enacted during the colonial rule. So when you have inherited acts, enactments, and the legislature from the colonial era, so the colonial era says that every institution which functions in the country is tethered to the crown. That was the colonial time. Now of course the crown became Government of India. So therefore, for RBI to imagine that they are totally autonomous and independent is incorrect. First of all, that is the first thing. Although a lot of people in the country think that RBI is an independent institution, the fact is that it is not an independent institution, and Section 7 is a glaring example of that. That is, government has got the power to intervene in RBI and direct RBI as per the economic policies or in interest of the country or whatever. Then definitely we cannot call RBI as an independent and autonomous institution. RBI is responsible for framing the monetary policy, whereas the government is responsible for the socio-economic, the political, economic, and the welfare of the state overall, framing the economic policy. Now both have to work in tandem, and RBI, to my mind, RBI was idolizing U.S. Federal Reserve. Now, there's a lot of difference between U.S. Federal Reserve, which the whole world looks up to, and the RBI in India. The U.S. Federal Reserve is, first of all, the board members are set up for 14 years, whereas in RBI, the board members are for 3 years. Then the appointment of board members in Federal Reserve is done by the President, and it has to be approved by the Senate, confirmed by the Senate. In India, Government of India appoints the governor and the deputy governor. There is no parliamentary approval required for appointment of a governor. That is another main difference. The third difference is that in the U.S. Federal Reserve, the board of governors or the governing board cannot be removed by the president, whereas in India that can be done. So therefore, for RBI to idolize U.S. Federal Reserve and try and imagine itself that it is behaving like a U.S. Federal Reserve, I think is incorrect, prima facie. Okay. And I think a balanced approach here is required. Now, as far as me being an economist, my viewpoint is that a balanced approach is required, whereas RBI should not imagine that it's an autonomous and independent institution. The government also should appreciate the importance of the institution which has been set up and which looks after the currency monitoring, the monetary policy, and so many other issues, the regulation of the bankers. It is therefore appropriate for the government to make a comment. Yesterday, Finance Minister made a comment that RBI recklessly distributed loans from the period 2008 to 2014. 36 lakh crores of loans were given during that period, whereas for remaining period after independence, only 18 lakh crores worth of loans were given. So how come such a massive disbursement was made in a span of 6 years? So therefore, did RBI turn a blind eye to the bank's recklessness of giving away the loans? Why didn't RBI regulate? Because this is vindicated by the fact that we are staring at an NPA of over 10 lakh crores today, and there could be more in the offing. So therefore, I think a balanced approach is required, whereas the government should appreciate that RBI is an institution and certain degree of independence and autonomous functioning should be allowed. RBI should also appreciate that it has to work in tandem with the Government of India, and both have to work hand in hand in the interest of welfare of the country. I don't think there should be any prestige or ego issues, because the interest of the country is supreme in my view. So therefore, for both the institutions to imagine that probably they are doing something and they need to prove that they are bosses is incorrect. And a balanced approach, working in tandem towards a balanced economic and monetary policy, is the need of the hour.
But somehow it will eventually lose RBI will eventually lose the autonomy and independency. So what will be its consequences if we consider its effect on our economy?
See, I think if you see my answer, the answer which I just gave, the answer to this question of yours is quite hidden in there. The fact is that if government imposes directions on RBI and RBI loses its autonomy, as you said, first of all, RBI is not a completely autonomous and independent institution.
Right.
I think we need to understand that. And Section 7, as I said, is a glaring example of that. Now, even if RBI loses autonomy, I don't think, Nyamika, any government, for that matter, which is functioning for the welfare of state, would take any decision. I mean, I'm keeping aside the political consideration that if there is a political selfish vested interest or a political selfish interest which is contained in a decision, that is another aspect. But otherwise, assuming everything else to be good, which is each government is functioning for the welfare of the people, I don't think any government will take a decision which will go against RBI's basic formulation of monetary policy. I mean, why will any government try and do something which is totally opposite? Because when RBI imposed those restrictions on the 11 banks under the prompt corrective action, PCA as it is called, to not to disburse loans, that was also in the interest of the country because the number of NPAs were piling up. NPA amount was piling up day by day, and it was very well realized that these loans were given recklessly, and RBI should have woken up at that time. What was RBI doing at the time when the loans were being disbursed? This is what Finance Minister said. So had RBI intervened at that time when this 36 lakh crores of loan during 6 years was given, then probably we would not have been staring at this situation right now. So for RBI to suddenly wake up and tell 11 banks to stop disbursing loans, it could have done that at that very moment. It could have scanned the loans. It could have examined those loans in terms of the credentials of the borrower or in terms of the securitization of the loans. It could have intervened, so we would not have had such a huge pileup of NPAs. So therefore, even if RBI loses its autonomy after invocation of Section 7, I don't think government is going to do anything silly which goes against the country. Basically, Nyamika, I reiterate on what I said, that what is supreme is the welfare of the state, is the interest of the country. So any decision, whether taken by the government or by the RBI, should be in agreement with the interest of the country. It should not go against the interest of the country and people at large.